Hello, this is Allison Lucas E. Love with the City of Euclid's Department of Planning and Development. I am the Community Projects Manager as well as the Project Manager for the Euclid Waterfront Improvement Plan. And the purpose of this recording is to provide an update on the waterfront plan, including current construction progress as well as the anticipated timeline for the next phase of construction. The Euclid Waterfront Improvement Plan is a transformational, precedent-setting, erosion mitigation, and public access infrastructure project that is essential for livability, economic growth, and community resiliency here in the City of Euclid. The community goals, as shown on the screen before you, were created through a public consensus building process in 2009 at the time that Euclid City Council adopted the waterfront plan into its then current master plan. After a few years of negotiation, by 2018, the city had secured site control through long-term easements and was awarded all permits, including from the Army Corps of Engineers, ODNR, Ohio EPA, and others. With a construction site spanning about 3,000 linear feet of shoreline, this remains one of the longest coastal stabilization projects that ODNR has permitted on Lake Erie. Over the past decade, the city has made many strides to construct improvements recommended in the overall waterfront improvement plan, including new trails through Sims Park and the fishing pier, which was constructed in 2013 and is seen on the slide before you. To date, over $10 million has been invested in the overall plan in testing, engineering, permits, and construction, including a $4 million allocation from the Cuyahoga County Casino Revenue Fund. In fall of 2018, construction began on Phase 2 West, which is seen on the image on the screen highlighted in orange. It is part of what will eventually be a 3/4 mile lakefront public access bike and pedestrian trail that connects Sims Park on the west to a future lakefront park at approximately East 248th Street and Lakeshore Boulevard. The render before you was created by Smith Group, who has been our long-term consultant with the City of Euclid for the waterfront. They are engineers and landscape architects. In the image before you, you see a photo, or a render rather, of a partial shot of the fishing pier, as well as the pier gateway area, which was part of the Phase 2 West construction. This segment of the trail that's visible in the render, as well as the pier gateway and the fishing pier, are currently accessible to the public. This is a render also by Smith Group of the future Paddlecraft Beach, which will be at the far east end of the project. In the background of the image is a potential for what the Upland Park may look like, and this will be, again, a new public lakefront park at about East 248th Street and Lakeshore Boulevard. On the right side of the screen, you can see the trail connection that continues in this situation west about 3/4 mile to connect to Sims Park. In this image, you can see another render by Smith Group at the bottom of the screen of a segment of the trail that is currently under construction as part of Phase 2 West. Breaking ground on this phase drew a lot of attention to the project, which has become really a model for public-private partnerships that other lakefront communities are seeking to emulate in order to combat rising water levels. In June of 2019, the City of Euclid held a public meeting, which was standing room only in City Council chambers, open to all of our residents and neighboring communities to learn about lakefront erosion and what they could do to combat it. That meeting is still online at thecityofeuclid.com, and we all know that rising water levels have had devastating impact across the 4 miles of Euclid shoreline and in the greater region. And the rising water levels are only continue to predict or are only predicted to continue to rise. In June of 2019, we surpassed a record that had previously been set in June of 1986. So we are very proud as a community to lend our experiences to municipalities from Bay Village to the many communities in Lake County who have come to visit the project site and to seek advice about how to recreate the process that Euclid has created over the past decade. And we definitely look forward to both Cuyahoga County and NOACA's work to expand public access throughout the region, again, using Euclid as the model. In the compilation of images before you, you see what used to be the storm outfall to the west of the pier has now been turned into a bioretention area such that the water that comes from Sims Park and this new trail will be cleaner as it enters Lake Erie than it was previously because it's going through a biofiltration process. And very shortly, you will see those concrete areas be planted with a variety of native plants that were specifically selected by Smith Group for this area, but also for the purpose of purifying that stormwater. You can also see in the shoreline condition in the top photo taken in November of 2018, just before Haynes Construction, which is the current contractor on Phase 2 West, competitively bid and awarded in summer 2018, that $6.8 million contract. This photo was taken just about the time they were mobilizing. They had already denuded the bluff, so removed the trees that had already succumbed to erosion and were just really laying on the side of the bluff, and the many, many tons of impervious debris that had to be removed that had previously been put in place in a way to counteract erosion. But what you can see in the lower image is that that bluff has been laid back to a more stable slope at 2:1, and then of course the public access trail that also is part of a seawall and rock revetment to mitigate any future erosion. One of the exciting updates that the city has, in addition to anticipating the next phase of construction, is the acquisition of an additional 6 acres of undeveloped land just to the east of Sims Park, and that's visible in both of the photos before you. So that piece of land is behind the Lakeside Cove Apartments right off of Lakeshore Boulevard. And with the acquisition of these 6 acres, a little over 6 acres, it will expand the publicly accessible parkland on the lakefront to approximately 40 acres, which is really fantastic. The acquisition will be complete by July 2020 and is made possible through a grant to the city from the Ohio Public Works, as well as the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. Construction on this current phase is anticipated to reach final completion by the end of May or June. Due to COVID, we know there has been a slight slip in the schedule from some of the fabricators and what they have been able to produce. But our contractor, Haynes Construction, is confident that he will be able to reach the final completion of this phase in early summer. The photo compilation before you on the upper image is again the shoreline condition in November 2018, and the lower image a year later, November 2019. So you see where before there was absolutely no access, you see that culverted stream pipe start to show itself because of all of the erosion. You have a mix of invasive species and just other types of plants that are not great for an eroding shoreline. And then in the lower photo, you see this 10-foot wide public access bike pedestrian trail that just gives you this really fantastic expansive view of the lake. We have that revetment that will protect the shoreline. And also the cobble is in view a bit in this photo that enhances the nearshore habitat for birds and fish. And then on the south side of the trail, you've got a gutter system that is conveying water off of the trail, as well as water coming down the bluff. And in just a few days now, that bluff will be planted with native vegetation that have a fibrous mat root structure that'll really help hold that earth in place. So as the project's evolving, from the many people that are down there on a daily basis and have been able to take advantage of the nicer weather and experiencing the trail section that's open, I think you can really see the difference in how our lakefront is being used already without the project even being complete. So the city of Euclid thus far has raised over $3.6 million necessary for the next phase of construction of the public trail and shoreline stabilization project. We are calling this phase 2 East. That $3.6 million includes a $2.67 million allocation from FEMA and $500,000 from ODNR through the state of Ohio. Additional funds are derived from the Harbortown TIF and the kickoff of our capital campaign. It is important to note that these funds that have been applied for and awarded, as well as those that are still applied for and we are still waiting on a determination for, are specifically awarded to this project and to this type of project that is specific to Lake Erie and a recreation area where public access will be established, and it cannot be spent in any other way. So as you can see on this chart, the city of Euclid to date has applied for a little over $7.3 million. Again, we have been awarded a little over 3.6 of that and look forward to continuing to update the progress on those grants that we have applied for, as well as seeking additional state and federal awards. As you can see from Smith Group's opinion of probable cost, which is the second chart on the screen, which was updated in April of 2020, Phase 2 East is anticipated to cost between $5 and $5.5 million. The first phase, Phase 2 West, was a $7.9 million project. At the time, the city of Euclid only had $6.8 million to move forward. So some of this $5 or $5.5 million OPC is part of the funding or part of the project of Phase 2 West that is now moved into Phase 2 East in order to fully stabilize the shoreline and connect the public access trail across that 3/4 of a mile. So when you combine the Phase 2 West, that's complete at $6.8 million, with the Phase 2 East, you do get that complete 3/4 of a mile trail. So we'll go into a little bit of an overview onto what the Phase 2 East actually accomplishes. In winter and spring of 2019 into 2020, Smith Group has prepared the final engineering and bid documents for this next phase of construction. As I mentioned, this will continue the public access trail to East 242nd Street, which is the lower loop on, or lower trail rather, connection on this render, as well as to about East 248th Street, again, where that future lakefront park is. And we are calling the sub-projects within this Phase 2 East the FEMA funded portion. So that is that $2.67 million that was awarded by FEMA, and that is specifically targeted to an area of the project where we have the highest density of residents and the structures are in pretty immediate danger of needing to, pretty immediate danger of falling into the lake due to erosion. The west of FEMA portion is the holdover from the earlier phase where we were not able to complete the full $7.9 million at the time of the contract award back in fall of 2018 to Haynes. So this piece has now been incorporated into Phase 2 East. The breakwater and beach in the upper right-hand corner of the screen will be an add alternate in the future project. As you saw on the earlier slide, there's at least $4 million that we have applied for and anticipate hearing back on sometime this year. And should that funding come through, that will help us get to construction on the breakwater and beach area. And then the Upland Park will be developed in the future. There is a potential opportunity for that to be privately developed into a lakefront restaurant and other types of economic development projects, in addition to preserving a lot of the space for outdoor public recreation. This project will make use of the same innovative stormwater strategies that the first phase did. It includes a bioretention wetland, the cobble, and recreates that historic habitat on Lake Erie shoreline. So for those who have been down to the trail, what you see there is really going to be extended from a structural and aesthetic perspective throughout the remainder of the trail down to East 248th Street. So in terms of schedule, at the May 4th, 2020 council meeting, we anticipate seeking council's approval to advertise for competitive bids. There is no monetary request associated with the advertising for bids, and bids will be due back to City Hall by Monday, June 15th, when they are opened at Board of Control. A few other milestones that are outlined here include a pre-bid meeting that we anticipate having at the end of May, a potential council committee meeting, not yet scheduled but anticipated for early July, as well as the anticipation that we would come to council at the regularly scheduled July meeting to seek approval to award the contract to the lowest and best bidder as a result of the bidding process, again with the bids having been opened on June 15th. We would anticipate providing a notice to proceed and awarding the contract by the end of July in order to be compliant with the 90-day period that prevailing wages require of us. Again, just to touch on the funding, we have an opinion of probable cost from Smith Group, but we will not know what the overall cost of the base bid or the add alternate of the breakwater and beach will be until we get those bids back from the contractor. So at that point in time is when we will have in-depth conversations with council about the current funding position, which will hopefully be updated from the slide you just saw here at the end of April. And also that the next thing that we would be presenting to council would then be authorization to work with Smith Group again for construction administration. So that is another piece of legislation that will come before council this summer. And the reason for the timeline now, we have, again, if you remember, you can go back to the funding status. The two largest grants that we have secured have deadlines for when we need to spend the money. We need to spend them by 2021. And this is anticipated to be a construction process that takes us through the end of 2021 if we are able to start in fall of 2020. Also recalling the ebbs and flows of Lake Erie, and when its storm events are at its worst, that tends to be in the early spring. And so it is our intention, as it was with Phase 2 West, to mobilize the contractor in the fall so that they can get the stabilization completed throughout the winter, and then work on the public access components throughout the spring and summer and potentially fall of 2021. That way we are not in danger of having to re-engineer this project or having the shoreline really go through another spring event when we know that a lot of earth tends to be lost. So for more information on the Euclid Waterfront Plan, I invite everyone to visit the cityofeuclid.com. Under Departments and the Planning and Development Department, there is a link for the Euclid Waterfront Improvement Plan, where you can see drone videos, articles covering the project from the past few years, as well as resources for residents who are experiencing erosion and currently live outside of the project area. And I want to thank Karen Wonderly for taking really fantastic sunset photos nearly every day from the trail section that is currently completed as part of Phase 2 West. And this photo of her and of her dog, just a really great capture of the project, and just really all that we hope people will continue to enjoy and be able to experience with this continuation of this current phase of the project. So again, thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please email me, Allison, at alucacy@cityofeuclid.com. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.